Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Dr. Vincent Wiggins. I'm the Associate Dean here in the Office of Instruction and Online Learning. So I want to welcome you today. We're really excited about today. Today focuses the Hybrid Pedagogy Workshop. And I just want to make some quick notes here. We are recording today's session, so it is live stream. So if you don't want to be recorded, please do not talk during the presentation or don't come into this area. This camera right here is doing the recording. All right? So I just want to start with one of my favorite educational quotes by Dr. Donald Norman. And he says, "I'm not a fan of technology. I'm a fan of pedagogy, of understanding how people learn and the most effective learning methods. But technology enables some exciting changes." And in fact, that's my research study. So I'm excited to have you here today at Harold Washington College as we focus on learning and the hybrid pedagogy. We have some wonderful faculty here that are presenting and also facilitating the breakout sessions. So I want to introduce you to them right quick, and then we'll move on and I'll hand it over to them. Over here we have Dr. Greer, and we have Dr. Bivens. Dr. Warren will be talking later. We also have Professor Crockett, Professor Salaji, thank you, and Dr. Uwash, or Dr. O. So before we go into the breakout sessions, we're going to have three presentations, and they're going to be led by Dr. Greer and by Dr. Bivens. Dr. Bivens is going to start out with talking about the hybrid pedagogy. Then we're going to go to Dr. Greer, where she will talk about hybrid students. And finally, we'll end up with using technology in the hybrid learning environment. So we have three breakout sessions. They're 20 minutes each, and you will get a chance to go to all of them. So based on your last name, you will be divided up into three different groups, okay? So it's been scrolling up here. I don't know if you noticed, but I'll just read it out to you. Group 5 is last names A through D. Group 5, not group 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a reason why I'm saying this. Group 5, which will meet in room 405. So that's group 5. Group 6, last names E to K. So E to the letter K. You will meet in rooms 406. That's where you will start and you would rotate. And then group 7, you will be in last name starting L to Z, and that's in room 407. So group 5, you're in 405. Group 6, you're in 406. Group 7, you're in 407. All of these are on the 4th floor, right by each other. You can take the escalator or the elevator up to the 4th floor. So I want to, at this time, talk about something that's special here at Harold Washington College. We're fortunate to have our leadership here that wholeheartedly supports hybrid learning. She has written articles about the topic that include the hybrid online model good practice. Her article provides some best practices that we'll hear about today, and that will include matrix for the 7 principles of good practice. But I will let her share that with you later. At this time, I once again want to thank you, especially during pre-finals, I understand, taking the time to come out here today. At this time, would you please help me in welcoming our esteemed president, Dr. Margie Martin.
Thanks everybody for coming out today. When Armin said the date that we were going to do this, I said, are you kidding? The Friday before finals, nobody will come. And I'm totally wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong. And I've heard we have about 85 people either physically here or online. So give yourselves a round of applause for being here, all right? Great. And I'm thrilled that we can live stream this. I'm looking at myself, which is a little bit odd, but it is nice that we can stream it for people who can't be with us physically. And also it's going to be recorded, so for folks that weren't available at this time slot, so it's really great. So again, thanks for inviting me, and thanks for Vincent for organizing the day. I think the agenda looks fantastic, and the breakout sessions and the presentations are going to be great, so I know you're going to learn a lot. So how many people are here from Daly, just out of curiosity? Good, okay, couple, all right, good. How many people from Wright? I know I met you up front. Couple, good. How many people are here from Malcolm? Okay, good, some good rep at Malcolm. Okay, what about Al Harvey? Anybody? Oh, good. Kennedy King? Okay, great. Truman? All right, the rest of you are here in Washington, right? Okay, well, good. I mean, I really wanted to have representations from all colleges, so that's great. At least some of us from everybody. So I'm really excited to talk a little bit about hybrids. I only have 10 minutes, so I'll make it pretty quick. But I wanted you to know my story and how I got involved. So in 1999, I was just finishing my MBA. And I worked at a small liberal arts school in Ohio, and I was teaching Excel and some basic programming classes face-to-face. And I knew I really wanted to be a full-time faculty member. I was part-time, but an assistant dean at that time. And I knew I wanted to go on and get my PhD, but I didn't know in what. And I was a late bloomer, so it was important to me that I found something really relevant and important, because I knew coming into to try to do it kind of later, I don't want to say later in life, but a little bit older, that it would be tough. So I found out about a great hybrid program at Akron University that was structured about online learning and using technology and hybrids, but also had a strong computer science component. So that's a perfect fit for me. And so at my small liberal arts school, my first project was to start a hybrid model. And this was a school that was really against, I want to say against, but not supportive of using technology. And so in the article that Vincent referenced, we started our first hybrid in the business program. And it was a very strict model, but it was very effective. And I did write the article about it, and we actually copyrighted the model. And I've never earned a penny in my life on the model. I want that clear. It wasn't for money. But what was interesting about copywriting it was that over now the last 13 years, it has been used and adapted internationally, nationally. And I think that's what's really important about what we're doing today, learning about hybrids and doing research on hybrids, because we're adding to the body of knowledge to help our students learn. And each one of us who teaches in a hybrid or online, we're probably going to find out something new or have some way that we've developed personally. And all of us together, collaborating and dialoguing today, that's how we will improve student learning overall. Okay, so it's really important that way. And so it's funny because in my hybrid model, the one we developed, we used online discussion boards. And we found that those were really effective, both with face-to-face and online classes. But what we also find out, there's just tons of different hybrid models. We don't really have a structure here at City Colleges yet, and I'm looking in the crowd, and I know a lot of you have already taught hybrids for many years. But one thing I know from being an HLC, a Higher Learning Commission peer reviewer, is one of the things that they'll be looking for in our hybrid models is that we are having some face-to-face component, and HLC says anything from about 39 to 40% is okay. At City Colleges, we're doing 51% of face-to-face, but what they want to make sure is in that other parts that we're doing online, that we're really engaging students. And it's not that they're doing their homework or writing papers. It has to be instructional. It has to be engagement with faculty and students and other students. So as I was looking over my old model and the article I wrote in 2003, which is really old, the thing that hit me the very most was, you know, when we're thinking and when you're starting to work on hybrids, and I know a lot of you already have, is that Chickering and Gamson's 7 principles of good practice in undergraduate education is going to be key. And the things that we'll be looking at is having that faculty to student interaction. That's always the most important. Student-student, active learning, time on task, having really high expectations, and prompt feedback, especially when you're online and hybrid. That's even more critical than face-to-face. And then respecting diverse learning styles. So those are all the things that I think as we're looking at developing our models and talking about the pedagogy today that we'll want to keep in mind. The other thing I want to share with you is an article, or it's actually a white paper. These started coming out in 2003. I don't know if you've ever read any of them. They're called online scorecards, and they talk about hybrids and online. But the folks that write it is Elaine Allen and Jeff Seaman. And if you just Google a Sloan Consortium and reports, now they're called the Online Consortium. They've changed their name, but they've been coming out since 2003. And I think what's interesting and relevant today is one of the things they look at is how faculty and administrators view online and hybrid learning. And it talks about specifically lots of things about them, but the one I think is really interesting is the learning outcomes, what we perceive student learning outcomes, and they actually look at metadata of research in hybrids and And way back in 2003, who wants to guess which delivery mode had people perceived having the best learning outcomes? What do you guess? Just scream it out. Face to face, of course. You can't be with people face to face or they can't learn, right? Well, now in 2015, guess which one has the highest learning outcomes? Hybrid and blended. You guys are a smart class. All right, very nice. Okay, but Google that because there's a lot of other information. But what I want to say with you today, why it's so important that you're here, is that we all want students to have the best learning outcomes. So using technology is a way, and there's lots of different tools. Like for example, we're using a tool called UCU now with our speech classes, but there's online quizzes, there's lots of different things we can do. And a lot of it suits different disciplines, like the discipline you're teaching. Other things adapt to you as an instructor, what works for you personally, what you feel engaged in. But there's lots of different ways. And I am absolutely thrilled that so many faculty are interested in teaching hybrids. At Harold Washington, one of the things is that we have really tight space. So if we really develop some hybrids, we could actually offer 2 classes instead of 1 in different time slots. So that's an advantage as well. But even more importantly, I'm excited because it might be the best way for our students to learn. And so going forward, one of the things I want you to consider is doing research. I think as we work together, one of the things that I'm finding is there's not really empirical research with faculty who are teaching hybrid, online, and face-to-face the same class, using the same textbook, the same assessment tool or evaluation tools and things. So one of the things I hope we can do together is some real research so that we know for our students at City Colleges what delivery modes and what disciplines and maybe what tools and strategies and pedagogies work best. So that's my, I'm throwing out that kind of hook that hopefully somebody will want to do that with us. So again, thanks so much for being here today, and thanks for the team for putting this together. I'm really supportive of hybrids and online learning, and I myself am learning more and more every day. So I'm excited to hear what you learned, and thanks again for being here. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Bivens, who's going to talk a little bit more about hybrid pedagogy. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
This one's. Thanks, Dean Wiggins. Bye, Margie. Thanks for coming back to your presidential legs. I have to say, I'm delighted to be here with all of you on this finally sunny spring morning. recognize your efforts with finals looming, and I'm sure each of you, like me, have plenty of grading to do. Mine's currently sitting in my backpack, ready to go after this. We realize your time is valuable. We hope you find your experience here learning about hybrid pedagogy just as valuable. In the sign-up survey, it was clear there was interest in learning more about hybrids and hybrid pedagogy. The purpose of my talk is to provide context to weave into your thinking about hybrid courses. It's not meant to be prescriptive, but suggestive. To start, I want to tell you about my teaching experience, and then to orient and frame our thinking about hybrid pedagogy for the morning and beyond, I will tell you about hybrid pedagogy and its role as a critical pedagogical practice. I've taught college writing for about 15 years. For the last 10 years or so, I've taught writing right here at Harold Washington in the English, Speech, Theater, and Journalism department. Of those 10 years I've been here, I've taught hybrid courses for the last 6 years. I've also taught in fully online spaces. Although I readily embrace appropriate technology, I do consider myself a critic of technology. In my own research, I'm skeptical of technology overselling what it can do and its effects on communication. In education and pedagogically, I'm even more critical of technology and its sometimes harmful disembodiment of ourselves and our students. In fact, just yesterday, I delivered a 4-minute speech to the Board of Trustees at 226 West Jackson about caution regarding educational technology. Like Frary and Hooks, I also practice critical pedagogy, which has made me a posthumanist. In another way, posthumanism helps me to recall our embodied actions as our lives become more and more digitized and mediated by technology. Relatedly, I'm suspicious of 3D printers. I know what they do. According to our vice president, there are 2 in our building. I embrace technology. I am, though, quite suspicious of it in certain instances. Clearly, I have critical pedagogical tendencies. Do you? Do you know your tolerance and acceptance for technology in the classroom? To determine your acceptance of and thinking about tech in the classroom, let's start with an artifact, the cell phone. I'm sure all of you have one with you right now. On my syllabus, my technology policy encourages cell phone use. I don't mind if cell phones are out. I don't mind if students are looking up words or assignments on Dropbox while I'm talking. My pedagogical practice encourages students to curate their own knowledge by accessing information readily available to them digitally via the internet. Do you allow students to use cell phones in the classroom? Think about your syllabus's technology policy. Do you have a technology policy? How does it read? Even more specifically, what role do cell phones play in your classroom? I think those are good questions to begin to think about technology in your pedagogical practices. There's no right or wrong answer, but understanding how we think of technology while we're on the ground teaching versus hybrid or online may help us understand exactly what we're undertaking before we begin to teach hybrid, now or again next semester. Our lives are increasingly digitized. The internet as a digitized environment is also a learning environment. I have found, though, that the hybrid model of learning takes fuller notice and awareness of our lived experiences of our increasingly digitized lives. Hybrid courses might replace one or more of its weekly class sessions with required online activities, but those are just logistics. Hybrid pedagogy strategically weaves technologically mediated learning activities into our increasingly digitized lives. Hybrid courses are part of a hybrid pedagogy and a hybrid pedagogical ecology. According to Jesse Stommel in the journal Hybrid Pedagogy, that was in the email that was sent out to you on Wednesday, he writes about hybrid pedagogy. At its most basic level, the term hybrid refers to learning that happens both in the classroom or other physical space and online. In this respect, hybrid does overlap with another concept that is often used synonymously, blended. There are some careful distinctions between these 2 terms. Blended learning describes a process or practice. Hybrid pedagogy is a methodological approach that helps define a series of varied processes and practices. Blended learning is tactical, whereas hybrid pedagogy is strategic. And you'll see that as you go through the workshops today. That's my note, not his. Continuing on with Mrs. Donald's quote. When people talk about, quote, blended learning, they are usually referring to the place where learning happens, a combination of the classroom and online. The word hybrid has deeper resonance, suggesting not only that the place of learning is changed, but that a hybrid pedagogy fundamentally rethinks our conception of place. Hybrid courses are more than offering some classes face-to-face and some classes and/or activities online. Hybrid pedagogy is much, much more than that. In fact, according to the Digital Pedagogy Lab, which is an excellent resource if you haven't already looked at it, quote, professional development in digital pedagogy should be more than an LMS or learning management system walkthrough on Adobe or an Adobe Connect session, or an intimate view of, quote, best practices that aim to make learning and teaching online formulaic and rote. That's not our intention today. If you currently teach hybrid, you know there is more to it than LMS navigation. There are sources housed in open access peer-reviewed journals like Hybrid Pedagogy to further fold into your thinking about hybrid pedagogy, hybrid courses, and designing learning for hybrid students. Hybrid Pedagogy, the journal that I don't own or write for currently, but I do find it an excellent source, lest you think I have a conflict of interest up here. Hybrid Pedagogy is an open access peer-reviewed journal that combines the strands of critical pedagogy and digital pedagogy to arrive at the best social and civil uses for technology and new media and education. And it avoids the valorizing of educational technology, but seeks to interrogate and investigate technological tools to determine their most progressive applications. Hybrid pedagogy is more than the logistics of scheduling classes that used to meet twice per week, only once per week, and figuring out how to use Blackboard to deliver content. Hybrid pedagogy is critical digital pedagogical practice for faculty who seek the flexibility of delivering learning opportunities not just one day a week, but in differently digitally mediated ways in spaces outside the physical classroom. In sum, hybrid pedagogy is critical of technological tools. Hybrid pedagogy is embodied in our increasingly digitized lives. Hybrid pedagogy recognizes different conceptualizations of learning spaces, like a Google Doc or during a Collaborate session. When you design or revise a course, you inevitably think about the student who will use the syllabus and write the assignments and take the test, right? Hopefully, right? So who is the hybrid student? Who are we teaching in hybrid courses? Essential questions for sure, and questions I will let my esteemed colleague, Dr. Elizabeth Greer, address.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Is it on? Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Wiggins, Dr. Wiggins. So, in just a little bit of background on myself, I've been here at Harold Washington since 2008. I've been teaching online since 2009, and I've taught hybrid English classes. And I'm also the academic online coordinator for the online classes in the disciplines of English, speech, and theater. So I know that I've been in email contact with many of you here. If you could at some point come and introduce yourselves, I put a name to a face, I greatly appreciate it. So in that time, I have been thinking about the different kinds of students that I've encountered over the years. And in my head, I've divided them into 3 categories. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that these are exclusive categories. One student can be all 3 different types of student, but I do think there are some interesting distinctions for us to think about. So the first student is the traditional student. And in my head, that student is anywhere from 18 to 80, right? This is the student who comes every day to class, sits in front of us, and hopefully is engaged in the classroom. They value face time. So they've made the decision to come and enroll in a class that meets at a particular time because they would like to be in front of you at a particular time every week. They also frequently build their work/life schedule around their class schedule. So, for those of you who say if you work registration or you help students to figure out what they want to do, next semester, they will say, okay, these are the days I would like to come to campus, and the other days, I'm going to be working, or I'll get my childcare around that. But for them, their priority is to be sitting in front of you at a certain time every week. So that's the traditional student. The online student is just a little different, and in my personal experience, this is just from personal experience, I have found that the successful online student tends to be a little older. They are usually not directly out of high school. I know in my own experience in enrolling students during registration, sometimes I'll say, well, all we have available is an online English 101, and if they are 18, they usually say, no, I don't want that. I know I couldn't handle that. I want to be in front of someone. So I've found that the successful online student is a little bit older. They value the flexibility that the online environment provides them, primarily because their life or their work schedule is driving the organization of their day. Right? So either they've got a full-time job like 9 to 5 that they don't have any flexibility, or I know I've been really surprised, and I give so much credit to my students who have newborns at home. I don't know if you've taught online, but many times in the introductions, I will have women say, I'm nursing my 4-week-old right now, and that's why I'm taking this online class. Wow, I could never do that, right? So that is their primary, that structure of their day is focused on the other things that they have going on, either their work or their life. That takes priority. But they do still obviously want to come and to get an education, so the online environment is perfect for them. So then we have this other student, this hybrid student. And this is a tough one. For those of you who have taught hybrid classes already, you may have found that there's a little bit of frustration with the hybrid student because we don't really know who the hybrid student is yet. We are still working on that, and we're still working on cultivating a culture of hybridity. We have to identify who this student is, and I hate the term market, but market those hybrid classes to that particular student so that they can be successful. Because if not, the hybrid student, the student who is sitting in front of you in your hybrid class often has some misconceptions about what a hybrid class is, and therefore they don't do well. Oh, this is only half the work, right? What do you mean I have to do stuff online? I thought I just had to come here 1 day a week, right? That's not the student we want. So in thinking about what the ideal hybrid student is, in my fantasy, this is my fantasy student, okay? This person understands the importance of engaging equally with the online and the face-to-face components of the class, right? So they understand this is not a half class. This is not I don't feel like coming to class, so I'm just going to do the work online, or I don't feel like doing the work online, so I'm just going to come to class, right? That is not our student. Our ideal student understands that both parts of the course are incredibly important. They also value the face time with you. However, they are organized and self-motivated enough to complete the tasks online. So it's almost like they want half you, right? So if they have questions, they'd like to be able to see you 1 day a week and ask those questions. And they value the time that they're sitting in the class. But they also have no problems remembering that they have things that they have to do online and completing those tasks and keeping up with that schedule, even though you're not in front of them saying, okay, don't forget, you have this due next week. I mean, you're doing that, but you're not doing it as frequently as you would in a traditional class. So this is my hypothesis based on my ideal hybrid student. So my hypothesis is that the hybrid student is a hybrid, okay? And this student bears more resemblance to the online student than to the face-to-face student, which, when I was initially thinking about this, that surprised me. Because I thought for some reason that the hybrid student would look more like the face-to-face student, but it's not true. The successful hybrid student understands that there is this component online that they have to complete, but they also value sitting in front of you. And I think it's that piece that is hard for many of our students to understand, this online piece. So that is why if they come to you already familiar with the online environment, then they will be more successful than if the online environment is completely new to them. So what we really have to do as we are starting to cultivate a culture of hybrid courses is begin to identify and train the hybrid student to understand what it means to be successful in both environments. And the other thing I just wanted to talk about quickly, I want to ask a question. How many of you have been told, or you get the sense from your administration, that hybrid classes may be a no? Maybe no, we may not want to offer hybrid classes. Some of you, it's amazing. I think people are afraid to raise their hands. We won't tell on you. Okay, so I've heard the grapevine that some administrations at certain colleges are not as friendly towards the idea of offering hybrid classes because they are operating on a lot of misconceptions, mostly that we want to offer hybrid classes as instructors because we only want to do half the work, right? And obviously we know that is not true. I think hybrid classes are twice the work. But there are some administrations that are a little reluctant to offer hybrid courses, and hopefully we are trying to change that. But for those of you who feel as though you may not be able to propose it right now, or maybe you're a little nervous to propose it because the culture isn't quite there at your college, I wanted to talk for a moment about the flipped classroom, because I wanted to let you know that the things that we're talking about here today are applicable in what looks on the schedule like a traditional course, but you can use the technology in a way that resembles a hybrid course, even though you're meeting them face-to-face. Does that make sense to everyone? So some of the things that I'm going to be talking about in my session, for example, are something that you can do in a flipped classroom. And I'm going to define what a flipped classroom is so that maybe you can understand this a little bit better. This definition comes from the website EduCause. It's a nonprofit association and the foremost community of IT leaders and professionals committed to advancing higher education. So the flipped classroom, and here's the definition. It's a pedagogical model in which the typical lecture and homework elements of a course are reversed. The notion of a flipped classroom draws on such concepts as active learning, student engagement, hybrid course design, and course podcasting. The value of a flipped class is in the repurposing of class time into a workshop where students can inquire about lecture content, test their skills in applying knowledge, and interact with one another in hands-on activities. During class sessions, instructors function as coaches or advisors, encouraging students in individual inquiry and collaborative effort. So in a way, I would almost advocate that the flipped classroom is a great way to begin to redesign your course from a face-to-face to a hybrid model. Because what you're doing is you are still creating the online activities and using the technology and sending the students there into the online space, but you're still meeting them as in the catalog twice a week. And eventually then, you will be able to just send them to the online space, free up that one particular day, and then come together as a class on the second day and continue with the workshopping and the group work and all the fun stuff in the classroom because they have already completed their online activities. So I just wanted, for those of you who feel as though I really want to do hybrid, but now's not the time, maybe the chair is not open to it or the administration is not open to it, the things that we're going to be talking about today in all the workshops are applicable for the face-to-face class that has a very strong technology component. And I'll be happy to answer any questions about that afterwards. Thank you.
So at this time, I want to just go back to what I had started out with, is that this is a district-wide collaboration. So we've heard two presenters talk about hybrid pedagogy and also how the students in hybrid pedagogy. And it goes back to the quote to say, I'm a fan of pedagogy, of understanding how people learn in the most effective learning methods. So before we go to the technology part, let's just take 10 minutes, take a break, grab some coffee, and if you want, this is a district-wide collaboration. We've created this space where you can talk to your colleagues and just sound out different things that you're processing in your head or some things you might want to talk about. So we're going to start with the technology part in about 10 minutes. So at this time, talk to your colleagues. Feel free to grab more donuts and coffee, or the restrooms are out the door and to the left at the back of the hallway. So we'll start at 10:25, okay?
Thank you.
Oh, come back here. Yes, come back here. There's another presentation here, but I want to give you a chance to just stretch your legs and talk to each other.
There were some people nodding.
Hello, welcome back. If you're not already in your seats, if you'd like to stand and stretch, I can see some of you are sleepy. So if you've got some coffee or want some more coffee, and join us. I'm going to talk for about 15 more minutes about technology and pedagogy, but let me get the slide back right there. And I'd just like to remind you that the live stream is still going on, and so anything you say can be heard. And the live stream, of course, is live right now. It's going to be archived on the Academic Affairs hybrid space on our website at a later date. And the email that came from hwc_hybrid@ccc.edu, we got one on Wednesday. Look for some more information, including the link to this stream if you want to watch it again. Especially, and I don't want to call anybody out here, but especially if at your college there's some resistance to hybrids, I think this information might help compel some administration maybe to think differently about hybrid pedagogy, what you do in hybrid courses, maybe manage their expectations about what the work actually looks like. So, I'd like to thank Elizabeth for her thoughts on hybrid students. We had a nice discussion about them earlier in the semester. I'm one of the coordinators for the Committee on the Art and Science of Teaching here at Harold Washington, and we have some CAPS pods on SoundCloud. Please listen if you'd like. And we talked about who the hybrid student is. And that coupled with the fact that hybrid courses, at least at Harold Washington, have notoriously low retention rates, really low retention rates. In my experience in the last 6 years, the retention rates in my hybrid courses are abysmal. Talking about that openly, I think kind of lays bare one of the issues with hybrid courses, which is we don't know who that hybrid student is. And I think Elizabeth has offered some insight into that. On the other hand, although retention rates, and happily I'm a soon-to-be associate tenured professor here at Harold Washington, so I will say that, so you don't have to if that's been your experience. The pass rates and the learning surpass my face-to-face classes every time. I teach normally English 101, so college composition 1, and the pass rates typically for my face-to-face classes vary semester to semester, as I'm sure you're used to too, between 68 to 80%, right? Retention is a lot higher than that. It's something that I don't even typically look at. Retention for my hybrid classes is something I'd have to take a big gulp and a nice long drink of whiskey before I look at. But I'll be looking at those more depthly this summer. But the pass rates each semester surpass 90% for the exact same class. Now to me, that suggests the importance of what Elizabeth talked about. Who is the hybrid student? And why, if they stick around to the end, do they do so well? Because they really do. The next topic, so a little more thought to put into your framework as you think about hybrid pedagogy, who the hybrid student is. And now I want to talk about technology and hybrid pedagogy. So So back to my written remarks. To further orient your thinking about hybrid pedagogy and choosing educational technology, or EdTech is what it's called, for the hybrid student, I offer the hybrid courses I teach through the lenses of Captain Cook's shoes and the Fisher spaceman. Yes, Captain Cook's shoes and the fake story of a spaceman. Please stay with me. I use these anecdotes to highlight two essential elements of choosing educational technology and hybrid pedagogy. First, a little about the courses I do teach. Every semester in both my face-to-face and hybrid, and I teach both usually every semester, my students participate in one of two 8-week-long collaborative writing projects, either what's called the grocery game or the Chicago Itinerary Project. It depends on which class I teach. When I talk to my students about knowing the needs of their readers, I ask them to consider what their readers know and what their readers need to know, not just what they want to tell them. To help them think about what their readers need to know versus what they want to tell them, I use an anecdote from a fuzzy brain vacation memory from about 6 years ago. The memory comes from my reading of a book called Blue Latitudes by Tony Horwitz. Has anybody read it? It's hilarious. The book is based on Sea Captain James Cook's, the British naval captain, his expeditions that led to the Western world's, quote, discovery of much of the southern hemisphere, while he led his crew in search of, quote, the southern continent. Cook and his crew eventually took a small boat to the shoreline of, I think, Australia. I was on vacation, it was post-spring semester. I don't remember much, I had margaritas in my hand quite a bit. I think, and he noticed while he was on the shoreline of Australia, that the indigenous people didn't have any shoes, right? So this is 18th century. He immediately sent his crew back to the big ship to get shoes. Cook proudly, when his crew came back ashore, took the shoes and handed them over to the native people. The indigenous folks in Australia looked at the shoes and tossed the shoes aside. They didn't know what they were, they didn't need them, and they clearly didn't want them. The purpose of sharing Cook's anecdote with my students is this: don't fill your writing with Captain Cook's shoes. Don't tell your readers what you want to tell them what they need to know. I reference this anecdote now as a touchstone to frame the purpose of technology and pedagogy, whether it's face-to-face, online, or hybrid. The pedagogical need must precede the educational technological choice. And as a critical pedagogical practice, the technology must be needed. So moving on from Captain Cook's shoes, now I'm going to talk about the mythical Fisher spaceman. Although a myth, the lesson of the spaceman, or the Fisher spaceman, is an important one. Snopes.com tells us, during the space race back in the 1960s, NASA was faced with a major problem. The astronaut needed a pen that would write the vacuum of space. NASA went to work. At a cost of $1.5 million, they developed the, quote, astronaut pen that could write in space. Some of you may remember it. It enjoyed minor success on the commercial market. The Russians were faced with the exact same dilemma. They used it. So note this is from Snopes. It's a myth. It's not true. But according to NASA, the Fisher spaceman eventually did go to space, but NASA didn't fund it. So it's a made-up story. Right? But I think there's truth in it. I did, in a recent trip to DC in January, go to the Air and Space Smithsonian, and they did have Fisher spacemans for sale in the gift shop. I have a photograph on my phone if anybody wants to see it later. Although a myth, Snopes.com helpfully explains the lesson of the false anecdote. Sometimes we expend a great deal of time, effort, and money to create high-tech solutions to a problem when perfectly good, cheap, or inexpensive, and simple answers are right before our eyes. For the collaborative writing game my students play, the pedagogical need my students have is to write collaboratively in a particular genre and to respond and edit based on my revision and their revision comments. To meet these pedagogical needs, my students need a digital space to write both synchronously and asynchronously. So if you're not familiar with those terms, at the same time and at different times. both while they sit next to each other in class and also when they just meet in the digital space from somewhere outside the classroom. I found Google Docs the best collaborative, interactive, intuitive space for these learning activities. And I did try many others. I tried wikis, I tried the Blackboard wiki, and Google Docs are free. Google Docs are a perfectly good, cheap, and simple answer right before our eyes. As I close, please remember, hybrid pedagogy is embodied in our increasingly digitized lives. Hybrid pedagogy recognizes conceptualizations of learning spaces, and they don't look like the same spaces that you or I learned in. Hybrid pedagogy asks us to be critical of technological tools, not to give our students Captain Cook's shoes or space pants. And what works for me in my classroom might or might not work for you in yours. Hybrid pedagogy asks us to be critical of technological tools, not to give our students things they don't need, but the technological tools we do choose are not one shoe fits all. The pedagogical needs vary by discipline, and they also vary by course and are situated in various disciplinary traditions and rooted in our own lived teaching experiences. In the upcoming breakout sessions, you will experience some of these disciplines and some of these courses. You will see these hybrid faculties' accumulated wisdom from lived teaching experiences, not a list of best practices found on our website. You will hear about learning activities and how these instructors met students' learning needs with technologically mediated tools. I'm fond of saying that we all get dressed differently in the morning, and yet we all end up fully clothed. That's to remind us that there are many paths to run. The breakout session presenters will show you how they do hybrid pedagogy in their hybrid courses. In Kinet's, Camelia's, and Najila's, and Elizabeth's sessions, they will all offer different takes on hybrid courses rooted in their lived teaching experiences. I appreciate and thank you for your attention. We will see you back in here after closing remarks after the last breakout session, which starts at about 11. So please take this time if you want to come visit with Elizabeth and myself, or David is hiding in the audience now, so you can ask him questions as well. Use the facilities, please have more coffee, or Vincent's going to have to drink it all himself. Enjoy, and thank you most sincerely for joining us at such a busy time during the spring semester.
I need Lois here. I just don't want to. So I'll give her the best. Hello, people listening elsewhere.